Hey there, party people. What's up? It is GleeCon in the house for the next episode of Lore of Warcraft. As we start into the continuation of the story of what's happening in the prehistory of Azeroth, we left off with Loken and a kind of Norse god redux, ultimately resulting in the spread of the Curse of Flesh, among some other little schisms in their power structure. The next thing that happens, it looks like, is the sealing of the Halls of Valor. So the Halls of Ordination or something, or maybe this is related to that. Let's find out. In order to defeat the other keepers, Loken realized that he would first have to neutralize Odyn and his mighty Valorjar army. But a direct attack against their floating citadel, the Halls of Valor, would be impossible. Instead, Loken took a more insidious approach. He reached out to Odin's adopted daughter, the Valkyr Helya. For millennia, Helya had dutifully followed Odin's commands, transporting the spirits of slain Vrykul to the Halls of Valor. Yet even while she did so, Helya nursed the cold anger that stirred in her phantom heart. She never forgave Odin for turning her into a Valkyr against her will. Helya dreamed of a day when she might avenge what had been done to her and the others who had been transformed into Valkyr. Loken called out to Helya and played on her simmering anger and feelings of betrayal. He promised he would break the chains of servitude that bound her to follow Odin's will. In exchange, she would seal off the Halls of Valor from the world forever. Thereafter, Helya could usurp Odin's role as the caretaker of all Vrykul's spirits. Enticed by this chance to sate her appetite for revenge, she agreed to Loken's plans. After Loken had restored her free will, Helya called on the same powers she had used to secure the elemental plane in ages past. She bent the latent arcane energies swirling around Azeroth to her command, sealing off the Halls of Valor and the inhabitants within. Odyn and his mighty Valorjar struggled desperately to escape their floating citadel, but they could not break the impregnable barrier Helya had created. There, the Valorjar and the Keeper would remain trapped within the golden corridors of the Hall of Valor for ages to come. Helya, now liberated from her life of servitude, forged a new home for herself and the other Valkyr. She created this enchanted refuge far below the Halls of Valor, binding it to Azeroth's great seas. The ocean mists soon coiled up to envelop Helya's domain and shroud it from sight. Known as Helheim, this realm would become the final destination for many Vrykul spirits after death. Yet the darkness that had long festered in Helya's heart transformed Helheim into a place of nightmare and shadow. The souls of dead Vrykul who arrived there soon found themselves turned into vengeful, wraith-like beings. These cursed spirits were known as the Kvaldir. They became one with the ocean mists, bound to the ebb and flow of the tides. The eternal fire of malice and anguish that burned in their souls would drive the Kvaldir to raid and plunder the shores of Kalimdor for all eternity. And we also discussed the Guardians of Shadow. Not all Valkyr continued to follow Helya after Odin's defeat. Some of these spectral beings disappeared into the Shadowlands. The few who still retained a glimmer of nobility in their souls dedicated themselves to watching over the physical world. From within the Shadowlands, these Valkyr would at times guide the dead back to the land of the living. Interesting. Alright, so we have, this is really little backdrop story for stuff that's covered quite a lot. This whole Halls of Valor storyline, you can get into that in the Storm Peaks realm in Northrend, and in Legion, I believe in the Storm Peaks region, you get to kind of experience Helheim and Helya, and even now in Shadowlands in this latest part, the second half of the Covenant campaign, you go back to the Halls of Valor and you can see Odyn there, and so a lot of this is covered in-game. We'll get a lot more into that. Of note, I think I must have been asleep in class when the Kvaldir, which are a big part of the Wrath of the Lich King expansion, you play that, you're going to encounter them almost from the beginning, which are pretty cool. I didn't realize they were directly related to Helya, and I hadn't made the whole connection between the weird oceanic nature that Helya looks like when you see her in some of these times you've got to fight her when she's all giant, and how it's kind of similar to these Kvaldir. Now the Guardians of Shadow, I wonder because Shadowlands is obviously on the people's minds, but the expansion, and I didn't realize that it was such a big thing. What are these Valkyr flying around the Shadowlands, watching over the physical world that are returning the dead to life? Oh, duh. They're the ones that when you die and you're at a gravestone that you talk to. I'm just sitting here getting all into it. I think that's what those are talking about, those Guardians of Shadow. I think those must be the little ghostly angel things that are sitting there when you die that you can res and get res sickness from and stuff. That makes sense. So we've got a little bit of lore about why they exist, and that's pretty cool too. All right, so slightly niche compared to some of the other stuff, and setting the stage really for a lot of Northrend, Wrath of Lich King, and what's happening up in Northrend. And next time, I'm sure we'll see even more interesting lore of Warcraft. See you, everybody. Thanks for listening.